Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
Alright, boys and girls. This seems unbelievable, but when you have been working in the pet trade as a sales associate long enough in strange areas, you start to see your fair share of entitled kids and parents. My first of many stories, so don't be too harsh. For context, I work at a mom-and-pop pet store in the eastern United States. While my expertise is in aquatics, I try to be a jack of all trades. The day that this happened was rather uneventful until this point. All up until a little brat and entitled mother entered the store. My store was pretty modest, so it was fairly easy to see customers come in and out, especially in the fish department. So I got the first look at these magnificent creatures. A 40-something-year-old woman talking on her cell phone, her hair obviously dyed blonde and her outfit practically screaming midlife crisis while her child was in tow. The kid must have been 7 or 8 playing on his Nintendo Switch, his shirt covered in what looked like a mixture of pizza sauce, soda, and plenty of mystery stains. At first, things were pretty normal, with the kid not caring about anything in the store, while the entitled mother was getting enraged at him for not paying attention, though that changed rather fast. The little brat and entitled mother were near the ferrets when the mother took the brat's switch, immediately causing a reaction of screaming and pouting before being distracted by some of the fish in my department. Alright, a bit of unnecessary information, but the way my store's fish department is set up is that 2/5 of it is fresh water, another 2/5 is equipment, and the rest is salt water. Given we weren't really known for salt water, we only kept pretty generic yet sought-after fish like hippotangs, various clownfish, 6-line wrasses, and so on. The thing about the first two is because of Finding Nemo, kids are always drawn to the Dories or Nemos. Alright, with that in mind, the first thing a little brat did was head over to the small assortment of hippotangs we had, practically pressing his face against the glass as he yelled out, "Dory!" as loud as he could. The entitled mother held me down from algae scrubbing, and this started the encounter. I like to act casual around the workplace as I find it lowers any sort of anxiety a customer has and makes me way more approachable. The first thing out of my mouth was, "Hey there, how's your night going? Need help with something?" The entitled mother started our encounter with a roll of the eyes before pointing to the tank and demanding a price with a simple but rude, "How much for this thing?" The entitled mother started our encounter with a roll of the eyes before pointing to the tank and demanding a price with a simple but rude, "How much for this thing?" The way she said it was rude. After shifting gears from a casual stance to a more professional one, I simply told her that the tank was $160. It was a good-sized tank. Of course, she scoffed. But what came next was a bit more worrying. The entitled mother pulled out $30 from her purse and placed it on a desk we used to bag fish, saying in an aggravated tone, "That's all you're getting. Bag him." Things started to go poorly from here. It's worth noting that it was 9:15 at this point, the store having closed 15 minutes ago, though we make it a policy not to ask customers to leave until 9:30. It was just my manager and myself at this point, my manager in the office closing down registers, so essentially it was like I was the only employee in the store. Seeing the entitled mother placing the $30 on the table, I raised an eyebrow before leaning against the wall, simply asking her, "Do you have a saltwater tank?" She didn't take this well. She screamed without a second passing, "None of your business. Now bag my fish, you little jerk." I simply refused and slid her $30 back towards her before she slid it back, now more upset. "I am going to get you fired if you don't bag my fish right now," she yelled. At this, her little brat was getting angry at the interaction, screaming like a banshee about how he wanted the tank, still referring to it as Dory and beginning to stomp his feet in a tantrum. Soon enough, I was asking them to leave, and this is where I messed up. I should have called the cops at this point, knowing that she wasn't going to leave without a fight. The little brat was on the floor at this point, pounding his fists on the floor as snot dripping down his face, while his mother tried to guilt me. "Sorry, sweetie, this guy doesn't want you to have the fish. He's perfectly fine with you having no fish friend to make you happy." At this point, she turned back to me. "Do you see what you did, you stupid jerk? You're breaking my angel's heart because you're being too stingy to sell me the fish," she said. Internally, I was laughing. I had figured everything was starting to resolve at this point, though I was mistaken. The little brat threw such a tantrum. You know how some opera singers can break glass with their voices? This kid would have a knack for something like that. The little brat was screaming as loud as humanly possible at this point, as he managed to reach into the tank. At last, my manager had made his way out of the office and was watching what was going on. The little brat grabbed a piece of live rock, accidentally grabbing a long-spine urchin. Angry screaming turned right to wails of pain as he pulled a rock out of the tank. A poor little bum crab in tow. At this point, I was less focused on the kid, but more focused on making sure my manager was calling 911, which he did. When I turned around, I saw something that still gives me nightmares to this day. The kid had been clutching his hand while his mother tried to help him, something hanging out of his mouth. The poor little bum crab had been crushed by the kid, the brat having shoved it into his mouth and chomping down on it, leaving a little claw hanging out of his mouth. The next 2 minutes were a strange combination of astonishment and panic. Myself telling the kid not to move his hand since he would break the spines of the urchin, while the entitled mother began hitting me with her purse, screaming that I hurt her kid. Your kid shoved his hand into a tank, one with toxic animals nonetheless, fox-faced rabbitfish, and did this to himself. Calm down and leave him alone so when the paramedics get here, they can get the spines out, I explained. How dare you? You expect me to let my angel suffer? If you just sold me the stupid fish, this would have never happened, she retorted. Your kid reached into the tank and ate a crab. What did you teach this kid? I questioned. Don't you ever tell me how to raise my angel. He had the right to eat that crab. You took something from him and he took something from you, she screamed. By the end of this interaction, the paramedics had arrived, restraining the kid and taking him into an ambulance as the police tried to sort things out. Unsurprisingly, the entitled mother tried to pin everything on me, saying that I threw an urchin at him and he ate the crab in a panic. Equally unsurprisingly, we had the entire thing on CCTV, including the entitled mother hitting me with her purse. Long story short, she was arrested for aggravated assault, as apparently she had stuffed a rock into her bag and gave it the extra punch. I didn't notice until after the paramedics saw me that I was bleeding on my leg from the jagged live rock. After giving a statement, the cops left, and the entitled mother and her little brat going off to wherever the cops took them, and I got out of everything with 8 stitches and a $300 bonus from my boss for handling the situation without anyone getting seriously injured. From what I ended up hearing, the kid had actually gotten stung by the fox face's dorsal spines, which sent him into a blind rage. The mom got a plea deal and ended up with a huge fine, some jail time, and some other problems. This was by far the worst situation I had ever had in this store, and I still can't believe the outcome to this day. This was a few years ago now. I was at work the other day when I saw a pouting kid over a mom not letting him get a hippo tang, and this has been brought to the front of my mind ever since. Edit. So, a lot of you guys have been asking about what ended up happening to the mother and her kids. I had sat down with my boss this morning and asked about the events, and while I didn't get all the answers I was looking for, this is what he had to say. As I've stated, I still stay up now and again, wondering what could make people act this way. And I did get a few answers. According to my boss, the woman was the wife of a known meth dealer, which didn't exactly surprise me given what happens in my town. The cops never had gotten a warrant to search their property for whatever reason, but this had given them the opportunity. From what he told me, the woman was abusing prescription antidepressants and drugs for attention deficit disorder and had a meltdown. Although I pressed charges, I was never called to court, and from what we could assume, she most likely struck a deal with the police to rat out her husband. I don't know the story with a little kid, though it wouldn't surprise me if he was on the same toxic cocktail of drugs. And In regards to the CCTV footage, he had told me that he handed it over to the police and couldn't show me for legal reasons, but that there wasn't much to see other than my manager running to the sales floor. The way our CCTV cameras are placed only really shows part of the sales floor, the office, and the register counter. Medical bills were way easier. I have been on an expensive medication not covered by most insurances for most of my life, so I've always had to pay out a lot for a really good insurance company, and this time it paid off. I ended up with a $100 charge for the ambulance, though my boss reimbursed me. Honestly, this was just a really surreal situation, and it has really confused me for a while. But I'm pretty happy I got things cleared up. Hopefully, the entitled mother is rotting in jail, and the brat is getting the love and direction he should have been getting all along. My wife and I have a tradition every year to go all out on Halloween for the local children. It's a way we give back to our community and have fun while doing it. We try to do something different every year for the kids and dress up to hand out candy. It's our favorite holiday. Each year we would divide the decorations. In the backyard we had tombstones, scary music, fog machines, and several animatronics, which were pretty cool but intimidating to some of the smaller children. Some kids would cry out of fear if their parents suggested going through the backyard to get candy. In the front yard, we had some more tame decorations and my wife was dressed up handing out candy. In the backyard, I had a huge candy dish set up, but I was hidden out of sight controlling some of the effects and animatronics. This year, we had 20 pounds of candy, 4 5-pound bags, split between the front yard and the backyard. After the first year of setting up the elaborate displays, our house became the must-see attraction on Halloween. We learned very quickly that it's always better to have too much candy than too little. We would do something extra special for the kids that were first to show up. One year, it was king-size candy bars for the first 10 kids. Another year, we gave candy and $1 coins. This year, we were feeling generous, so we decided to give $5 to the first 10 kids, split between the front yard and the backyard. My wife had 5 $5 bills she handed out, and I had 5. I chose to lay out 5 regular-sized candy bars with a $5 bill taped to each one and set them in front of the huge ball of candy, which had both 5-pound bags emptied into it. Now, I should point out that we never had any issues in previous years. I always used the honor system in the backyard, allowing the kids to get their own candy, and my wife would hand it out. The kids had a great time and were always respectful. We actually garnered a lot of thanks from the neighbors from going all out for the kids. The kids who enjoyed it would go out of their way to do nice things in return for us, such as shoveling our driveway or cutting our grass. Okay, back to the story. This particular year, it had gone dark before the kids started trick-or-treating. So I took advantage of the darkness with some of the more stealthy animatronics, such as ones that moved but were hard to see because they were not lighted, like snakes, spiders, and bats. From the sidewalk, kids that were not scared or wanted to be scared would walk down a small path around a few trees where I had let the grass grow close to high knee, which helped camouflage the strobe lights and fog machines. I would have a few small outdoor speakers playing some kind of creepy or scary sounds or music as the kids would walk down the path to a clearing in front of our shed, where we had this huge creepy-looking wicker chair with a motion-triggered zombie that sat in it. You would have to pass in front of the zombie to get to the table, which had the candy and a sign stating, "We use the honor system, please take 1 piece of candy." Well, the first kids showed up, a boy about 8 or 9 years old, his 4 or 5-year-old sister, and their mom. It was not uncommon for kids to be accompanied by their mom or dad if they dared to go into the backyard. Both kids took one look down the dark path and chose to go to the front yard for candy. This continued for about 10 minutes before a kid about 13 or 14 gathered up the courage to come through the backyard. Yes, I scared the heck out of him, but when he made it to the table, he just stood there. I wasn't sure if he was still shook up from the zombie jumping up because he just stood at the table for a moment afraid to take any candy. This happens a lot too because they think something will grab them if they touch the candy. One year we used a candy ball with a hidden hand that would do just that, but not this year. I set down the controls and stepped out from the shadows, which scared him again, and I was wearing a long black cloak and black gloves and skeleton face makeup to assure him that he could take one of the $5 candy bars. He grabbed it and ran quickly back up the path to what I guess was a younger brother who had received candy from the front door. My wife and I had a system to communicate when someone would take one of the $5 candy bars so we could make sure no one would go to the backyard and then try to go to the front yard. I would flip the floodlights on a corner of the house, which you could see. We had a sign along our wooden fence that pointed out that you could choose a scary path or the less frightening front door, so parents didn't have to take small kids into the backyard and leave with them crying from being scared. It was probably 5 minutes before two kids that looked about 10 or 12 years old came through the backyard together. They walked slowly, teasing each other along the way, jumping and screaming out of fear, occasionally when one of the bats or spiders or other animatronics activated by their proximity or motion. They eventually made it to the candy table after screaming when the zombie lurched forward as they walked past it, but each took a $5 bar. This left me with 2 more to give out. And then I would be on the normal fun-size Halloween candy. 5 pounds of Snickers, Twix, Milky Way, 3 Musketeers, and Hershey's. The next group I could see was 2 smaller kids, around 3 to 5 years old, with an obese kid who looked 14 or 15 accompanied by the entitled mother. The 2 little ones made their way to the front porch after the entitled child motioned for them to go get candy. Then the entitled mother and child decided to walk down the path into the backyard together. One of the first things I heard wasn't a startled scream but the stuck-up voice of the entitled mother. "What a horrible waste of money! This is ridiculous!" It was shrill and snide sounding. What she said angered me a bit, but I didn't want to ruin it for her kid. So I rushed to reset the zombie and take cover. Now she made sure she was speaking loudly enough so that anyone in the backyard could hear her. "This isn't something for kids. This is sick." I assumed it was a front to make herself not sound scared. I could see she had a death grip on the entitled child's shoulder as they walked down the path. They both screamed as one of the bats had swooped down at them. The kid sounded like he was getting shook up pretty good because he was whining, not saying anything, just this unsteady whine, which was odd for an older kid. The entitled mother decided to chime in again quite angrily. "These people are sick. We don't need this in our neighborhood. Just plain sick." It was quiet again until her kid screamed again when he had triggered one of the snakes in the grass. I could hear him trying to fight back tears at this point, like a bumbling, whimpering cry, but they pressed on. "I will take care of this. Just you watch." Now, I was assuming this was a parent trying to reassure their frightened kid, although he was a teenager. So I didn't think much about her comment at that moment. I was too busy thinking in my head where I would scare them. In retrospect, I wish I had paid attention better and realized it was an entitled mother up to no good. I stood behind the shed waiting silently for the zombie to trigger. When it was triggered, I lurched forward while making an angry moan. It should have happened within a minute of the snake. After a minute and a half, I peeked around the shed to see them waddling. Their size prevented them from being able to run towards the entrance. It only took me a second to notice they had stolen all of the candy that was on the table and the 2 $5 candy bars. I was furious, and I started running after them. I'm a tall guy and very fast on my feet. I got about 3 good strides in before I tripped over wires. What the heck? I looked down and saw that the mom had cut the wires on the animatronics bats. When I looked up again, I could see her gathering her 2 little ones and hurrying them to a car with her kid. I was seething at this point. Her car was parked in front of my next-door neighbor's house. I was at full speed as the car started and she stomped on the gas as I punched her passenger window where her obese kid was holding the full candy paw up with a huge grin on his tear-streaked face. The window did not break. It only made the mom recklessly speed out of the parking spot. with no regard for the kids that were trick-or-treating all over the neighborhood. Several parents and neighbors came up and asked me what was going on. I explained what they had stolen. Thankfully, one of the parents had gotten the license plate number before she got off our street. I was ticked but realized that we had other kids that wanted to visit. I closed the gate and explained to my wife what had happened. We decided to split the front door candy so we could at least pass out candy in the backyard, allowing other kids to enjoy our haunt. When I went back there to fix what the entitled mother had broken, I realized that she had cut power cords as well. I took the candy back to my wife at the front door, knowing it would take me a while to fix the damage. I quickly began making repairs and adjustments. About 5 minutes later, the police had shown up, thanks to a neighbor who had called them. They took a description of the car and plates, while I filed a report about the incident. By the time I had finished with the police, the 2-hour trick-or-treating had ended. My wife had about half a ball of candy left and said she might have seen about 100 kids. I had seen 3 or 2 thieves who ruined the rest of the night for the other children that wanted to attend. We had considered holding over for another night and allowing kids to come again, but unfortunately, the weather had gotten cold and very rainy, which plays havoc on our animatronics. It was a few days before the cops had located the entitled mother. She lived almost 30 miles away and brought her kids to my neighborhood because they had heard the rumors about our mini haunt. She and her son were charged with destruction of property, vandalism, and criminal mischief. Apparently, several cops' kids were supposed to attend but never got a chance after them, which angered several officers. The kid was charged as a minor. The police also recommended I file a lawsuit in civil court for the damages, which I gladly did. The fallout. In court, they tried to claim that I was bringing Satanism into the community, a community she didn't even live in, and that she felt bad she had to do something. They were as snide as ever in court. The mother was found guilty of destruction of property and vandalism, but not criminal mischief. She got 6 months in county jail. The kid was removed from her home and spent the next 2 years in juvenile detention. Apparently, this was not the first time he was in trouble. The court never elaborated on his previous crimes due to him being a minor. As for the civil law, I won, and she was ordered to pay me $4,000 in damages, plus another $6,000 in lawyer fees. A neighbor across the street is an attorney and represented me. We continued our hunt for 2 more years until we moved out to the rural area we live in now. We don't get trick-or-treating kids because the nearest house to ours is about 1/4 mile away. Context. I recently started as a front desk person at the campus housing office. Due to the school's policy to minimize the spread of the pandemic, they gave all the faculties and employees free masks that could be washed and reused again. If you want to know what school it is, it's the university in Washington that everyone applies to. The mask was in school colors, with the school logo on the left side of the mask. I honestly did not care if the mask had the school logo on it. The only reason why I wore it is that they are reusable and reduce waste. No one had any problems with it. If anything, people jokingly said that they would trade their masks for mine. The story. Until I met a Karen at the grocery store, I was there to pick up some stuff for dinner. I was at the meat section when a lady with a Karen haircut was staring at me. To her credit, she was wearing her mask, and her son, maybe 17 or 18, was wearing one as well. I was surprised at a Karen wearing a mask and thought maybe she won't be so bad. Boy, was I wrong. So I'm looking for a certain pork cut, and the lady continues to stare at me. I continue to ignore it, and she breaks the silence. You are so selfish. Pardon? Wearing that mask, you're selfish and a jerk. I'm sorry. I'm still not following. I thought you Asians are supposed to be smart. Can't you see your mask is upsetting my son? I look over to her son who looks like he wants to get out of there. And what makes you say that? That mask is for the school name. That mask is for X school. He applied there but was rejected. Her son tells her, Mom, I told you it was alright. Shut up. Then she turns to me. Now take that mask off. Ma'am, I'm really sorry your son couldn't get in, but how exactly is me taking my mask off going to help? How dare you? I'm not finished. It's a mask. That's it. It was a requirement to get into the store. I only wore it because it was in my car. Just go out and grab another one. And why should I do that? We don't know each other. And that's when the entitled mother tried to charge at me to take the mask off my face. Her son held her back though. And he told her, "You know what? I am done. I told you I got into the other famous university in the Seattle area, and I just started my first quarter. You were the only one who resented me going there because you apparently have some weird hard-on for this other school. If you want the school so much, then you go there." "How can you say that? You should be defending me. I'm your mother." A mother who isn't happy that her son is a university student, and a mother with false pride because she only has a high school diploma. "I can make my own decisions, Mom. Thanks." The entitled mom stormed off and her son apologized on her behalf. We had a nice, short chat. It turns out he was a pretty good guy with high hopes in these trying times. It turns out he had saved up enough money from part-time jobs, and his relatives were actually happy about the acceptance and offered some financial assistance. He was in school housing, but the entitled mom had tricked him the other day to come to visit her. I worked in the logistics department of a fairly large company. My job is to check our system for orders that come in and to arrange the shipping for them. When the orders come in, they include the date that the material needs to be delivered by. There are times when our materials planning team makes a typo and inputs the wrong date, but it's rare. Our company is huge on having work instructions and standard processes for everything we do. My work instructions say to plan the shipment to deliver to the need date in the system. There is one material planner who has a history of inputting the wrong date. I had to ask her a number of times in the past to verify the date, and she would go in and correct it. There were a few dates that looked wrong, so I emailed her and asked her to confirm. She flipped out, saying that she isn't making those mistakes anymore and I'm wasting her time. She reported me to my manager for not following the process or my work instructions, and he flipped out, saying that I'm going against our lean company culture and that I will be written up if I go outside of the process again by emailing the material planner. Months or so later, I see an order come into our system. A huge order with a combined weight of 30,000 pounds. I checked the need date and it needs to be delivered in 3 weeks to Colorado, and it's currently in India. I know what project this is for, and the need date definitely isn't right. This stuff has at least 2 months before it's needed on site due to build delays. The material planner never updated the need date to reflect those delays. So what do? I check the work instructions my boss wrote, and it says that if an order can't make the need date in our system via ocean, then it needs to go via air. I sure as heck am not going to email a planner to ask for verification after what happened last time. So I get in touch with our logistics company and it's going to cost close to $100,000 to fly the material from India. That's $90,000 more than shipping it via ocean. I set it all up and once it gets loaded on a flight, I send the material planner the documentation. It wasn't even 2 minutes before she called me flipping out. I told her I planned the shipment to deliver by the date she requested, and there was silence. After a long pause, I said, "Is there anything else I can help you with?" She hung up, and my manager called, also flipping out. I told him I did exactly what he told me to do and I followed the instructions he wrote. He told me I should have known better and that my job was on a line because of this. False. His job and the material planner's job were on a line because of this. I did exactly as I was told and was following the company culture. Human Resources and upper management launched an investigation, and I was cleared of any wrongdoing. I was specifically instructed not to go outside of the work instructions my manager wrote. The material planner was written up, and my manager got in deep trouble because he forgot to add an approval process for shipments over $15,000 to his wonderful work instructions like his manager had asked him to. Edit. To answer a few common questions/comments, I left the company a little while after all of this happened. A lot of people are saying they must have been close, but I know for a fact they weren't because they had never even met in person before. They worked in different parts of the country. I think that makes it even worse because they were just acting like that because they were miserable jerks. Some people are saying I let my ego get in the way and wasted $90,000. I should have said something about this to make sure the date was right. I should have, but when managers don't empower their employees to raise questions and use common sense, this is exactly what happens. I was threatened not long before this for asking questions, and I wasn't going to do it again.